Hey, what's up, guys? It's Bakes here, and thank you for joining me for day number 22 of my 31 Days of Horror. Today's movie is one that I was actually really looking forward to getting back to rewatch this one. It was a couple of times beforehand I'd seen this movie, but it has been a little while since those couple of times, and there was a few moments in this movie that I remember really standing out. I'm like, okay, this is one that is coming up in the lineup that I'm really looking forward to. And I think through the year as well, someone commented on one of my videos asking if I could talk about this movie, and I kind of forgot about it, so I'm also holding up, I guess, that end of it as well. But today's movie from 2007, it is titled Storm Warning. This is an underrated Aussie horror flick, also underrated in terms of brutal, disturbing movies as well, because this movie definitely drifts off into some pretty brutal territory and subject matter and things like that. This movie's kind of a mix between Wolf Creek, TCM, I Spit on Your Grave. They're just a handful that I thought of off the top of my head, but definitely Wolf Creek inspired for sure. The plot for this movie, let's get into that. So in this movie we have husband and wife. The husband is Australian, the wife is French. I can't remember if it actually says, but you kind of get the feeling like it could be her first time in Australia. So it's sort of like a fish out of water sort of situation for her in particular. But he decides that he wants to take her fishing. And the first thing that stood out with me when they go fishing is they both wear wetsuits, which to me was what the fuck? They're in a boat, why are they wearing wetsuits? I'm not sure if that's just Australian of me, but that is not very Australian at all. Why the fuck are you wearing wetsuits while you go fishing? I don't know, something was really pissing me off about that, just irked me the wrong way. And then on top of that, I'm sorry I'm rambling, but just on top of that as well, he was the worst fisherman ever. He pulls in a fish, and it does what fish do. It starts fucking flopping around and whatever. And he starts panicking, picks up a bottle of wine and smacks it over the head. Bro, it's a fucking fish. Pick it up and hold it. Who gives a fuck if it's flopping around? It was really pissing me off. You can probably tell by that. But anyway, because I just went on a crazy rambling spree about fishing there. But while out on the water, the sky sort of becomes a bit grey. They're a little bit away from shore, but they decide, let's do one more, sort of explore around the bend, around these reeds and mangroves and whatever. And they eventually get lost. The motor on their boat dies, and then a storm rolls in. Yeah, who would have thought with the title Storm Warning? So now that they're, stranded and they don't know where they are, and this storm has come in, and it's a brutal storm, going absolute ape shit. They decide that they need to abandon the boat and go look for coverage, and they come across this old rundown farmhouse. They think it's kind of abandoned, it's real shady looking. It's okay, what the fuck, but they're sort of out of options, so they go to check if anyone's home. No one's there. They go inside, and upon entering they go, okay, this is actually a worse scenario, because now that we've just seen inside, it's a bit more sketchy. But before they can even escape, the three homeowners arrive back home, and that's when the real danger starts, and I'll sort of leave it there for the plot. Again, I think this movie is pretty genuinely underrated in terms of Australian horror and things like that. But again, if I'm comparing it to Wolf Creek, it was possibly just a situation of being outshined due to the fact, one, Wolf Creek came out first, but it was sort of the bigger, better, more successful movie that's pretty much the same thing, but came out at the same time. There are plenty of differences between those two movies, but you can sort of feel the director of this one, I forget his name, Jamie Blanks, I guess he saw Wolf Creek and he's yeah, I could do something similar to that. And Wolf Creek is much better in my opinion, but getting back to this one, I think this would be a pleasant surprise for those who haven't seen it and especially enjoy brutal types of movies. There's the typical ones that you hear get brought up. I would also say Hostel is sort of got the same sort of vibe when it comes to the body brutality that's in this one. But I'll sort of leave that there. Moving on from that, this movie's short, sharp, and for the most part pretty straight to the point. There's a few moments where it dilly daddles, but the movie's got a runtime of 83 minutes, so it doesn't overstay its welcome. It goes by pretty quick for the most part. But the main reason that I would pitch this movie, and the main thing I want to highlight, is the gore and the kills, because the gore and kills in this movie are really, really good. There is not one underwhelming kill or set of effects that involve gore in this movie. Everything is really good on that part. and also just really memorable. Like, even if you watch this movie and story wise and, all the other elements aren't for you, those kills are going to be something that you don't forget and will just stick with you and be memorable. So that's definitely the highlight for the movie. I also really like the setting to this one. I wish it did feel a little bit more Australian, but I'll get into that later with some of my nitpicks and things like that. But I do like the setting, like this rundown farm, just sort of on the coast of the water and stuff like that's kind of cool. And also really like the storm itself because, as I said, it's like really brutal. It is a very clear reason why you would enter this house. Like, you would be freezing cold, lightning. You don't want to fucking die due to the elements. And this house looks sketchy, so that'd be the first thing. Why would you enter in the first place? But it just makes sense in this storm, and it's very impactful itself. Getting into my dislikes for this movie now, and honestly, I don't love or really care for any of our characters in this movie. Starting with our protagonist, obviously, I don't wish anything this bad to happen to anybody, especially the wife in this movie, because it goes into abusive, I can't say the word, but like rape territory, so it's not like I want bad things to happen to them and I don't care about them enough for them to have these terrible things happen to them, but they just really weren't doing too much for me, honestly. And when you don't care about them too much, it's hard to stay indrawn with what the story is. I will say the wife, she does become a pretty cool badass towards the back end of the movie when she's getting her revenge or whatever, but like I said, she had never really sold me in the first place. Just the couple in general aren't really doing much for me, and the husband's a fucking dork. Like I said, when you decide to put on a fucking wetsuit to stay in a boat all fucking day fishing and a fish scares you when it's flopping around, bro, you're a fucking nerd. So wasn't digging that. Even the bad guys, like, obviously in this movie you're not supposed to like them, but to me they just feel a little too over the top, or kind of like caricatures. Is that the word? Caricatures? I'm sure you get what I mean. Of like what the movie wants them to be. They just feel like, I don't know, they just feel a little bit out of place or something like that. I don't know. Like, the best way I can think to describe it, I'm going to use Wolf Creek as an analogy again, or a comparison. But like Mick Taylor from Wolf Creek, when he's doing like his dialogue scenes and speaking to them and he's not in like killer mode yet, like for example in the first Wolf Creek when he's sitting around the campfire and he's piss farting around, he feels like 100 old school country Aussie blokes that I've met before. Like, walk into a rural Aussie bar and everybody sitting in that fucking room sounds like Mick Taylor during that, sitting around the campfire scene in Wolf Creek. The bad guys in this movie, they feel too amped up, like too much like characters, if that makes sense. I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. Too over the top, too annoying in all directions, just a little bit too much. And I guess this is just like maybe small nitpicks, I guess, with the bad guys here, but like no characters in this movie are like really cared for. But most of my problems with this movie, honestly, are the characters. The story itself is fine. I guess you're not really sticking around for like an amazing, mind-blowing twist and turn story when you've got other things to highlight with a movie like this one. But it's short enough of a film anyways, so if the story's not working for you, it flies by pretty quick as is. But like I said, the main highlight for this movie and the thing that you're going to watch it for are the kills, the gore, the violence. That really is the highlight for this movie because it is really fucking good. The setting is cool. Like I said, I wish it felt just a little bit more Australian, I guess, because there's nothing really that screams Australia about the setting other than, them bringing back a baby Joey at one point, like a baby kangaroo. But really, like, if you took away like the Australian accents and just like, if you had this on mute and took away that Joey, you wouldn't know that they're in Australia. The storm is cool. It's an underrated movie, and I do think it's got merit and stuff. It's probably not going to be as high of a score that I'm giving it today as what most people would, or as you would probably think it would. But I'm still going to give this one a 7 out of 10. Still a relatively solid score. I do really think the main highlights for this movie are the gore, violence, kills, like, because as I said, there are no bad kills, no bad gore sequences, just all really fucking solid. It's more so the story is fine, characters didn't really care for them. Like, I actually had to double check. Like I said with the Australian stuff, it's crazy. We've had a lot of Australian movies in my 31 days this year for the lineup, which wasn't planned at all. It just sort of happened. But I actually had to check. Like, I saw director Jamie Blanks, and his name, just off the top of my head, did not ring a bell. So I searched him up on Letterboxd, and this is actually a very unique movie for his discography, because it's the first one that I saw there that rang a bell that is set in Australia. He's an Australian director, and he did Valentine, that early 2000s slasher, and he also did Urban Legends from the 90s, which are, so this movie is very different for something he would normally do. But like I said, I just presume he watched Wolf Creek and he's like, yeah, I'm Australian, like, I reckon I can do something like that. Now since Wolf Creek was so popular, there's obviously a market for it, and he just sort of went and had his best. But like I said, I was actually surprised that he was an Australian director, because it just didn't really feel too Australian to me. But the review's over. I don't know why I'm still rambling. Thank you for joining me for today's review, guys. I appreciate it. As always, if you've seen Storm Warning, let me know in the comments below. If you were the person that requested Storm Warning however long ago, let me know in the comments that was you. And thank you for joining me for today's review, and I'll see you tomorrow for day number 23. Can't remember. Forgot already. Alright, ladies, guys.